Every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we reach out across the world to be able to talk to you about the issues that are going to impact us all. We talk about what's happening internationally and especially what's happening domestically in the United States, how these things affect each other. What's happening in the U.S. affects the world. What's happening in the world affects the U.S. And we try and look at this and understand why is it happening and what will happen next, so we can have a plan, so we can do something about it. And most importantly, because we believe in the First Amendment. We believe in your right to be able to speak freely. It's not just an American principle, it's a principle for everyone around the world. And so we hope you're going to enjoy speaking with us today. Our phone lines are still down, and I apologize for that. We're a small system, and we survive on donations. But what we will do is we can receive your chats and your tweets. This is a very big breaking news story talking about Israel, Hamas, and how the Middle East is what we believe the third regional conflict that will be happening simultaneously across the world. It's not World War III, it's three regional conflicts. I want you to know that I've been trying to follow right now for the last, roughly for the last hour and a half. There has supposed to be a rally in New York City down at Times Square, 34th Street, where the Democratic Socialists of America are trying to rally Americans to support the terrorist actions of Hamas, the insane, vile terrorism of killing innocent civilians, men and women, children, and there are reports of even many reports and confirmed reports that Hamas has been taking hostage women and children, possibly putting some of the children into cages. We've seen that on TikTok now. It's a viral video, but we cannot confirm that. In fact, throughout the last day and a half now, we have been seeing a lot of information and a lot of misinformation, a lot of confusion, which is not unusual for the beginning of a war. But Israel has declared war. The first time in 50 years, they've declared war against Hamas. And do not doubt that in the center of this, at its core, is Iran. And we're going to try and go over that with you. How did this all come about? Where is this coming from? We would propose to you, and we believe that this is a direct result of a weak president, because Iran is reacting to the weakness that they have seen throughout the Biden-Harris administration, in the fact that the Biden-Harris administration abandoned 30,000 Americans around the world. In Afghanistan, 5,000 Americans. In the Ukraine, 10,000 Americans. This year, 2023, 15,000 Americans in the Sudan. And the news media have ignored all of this, have dropped those stories because they want to promote the 2024 election. They want to promote Democrats in the next election. It's one of the reasons why the Democratic Socialists of America, the party that represents, or that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Cori Bush, Jamal Bowman, that's their party. It is a fringe of the Democratic Party. It represents about 3% of Americans, and they have enormous voices in disrupting our lives and trying to push their agenda, which, as they declare it, is to destroy the Constitution, to rewrite and remake America in their view, based on their feelings. They want you to accept their feelings, their rule, their decisions. And that's why they support terrorism. That's my belief. And let me be clear. I'm saying that what Hamas did and is doing right now is terrorism. And I am saying that to support Hamas in this action against civilians, against children, this unprecedented invasion of Israel and attack on its people is both unwarranted, it is distasteful, it is terrorism, and there is no disguising it, there is no justification for it. If anyone disagrees with us on that, that's fine. You can disagree. We will never agree with you. This is terrorism. It is unjustified. It is unfair. It is evil. It is a vile action. And by the way, not only do we believe that, Governor Hochul of New York has agreed with that. Joe Biden has even come out and agreed with that. We have heard group after group, even among Democrats, even against progressive Democrats, the denouncement of this action. Even AOC, believe it or not, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the poster child of the Democratic Socialists of America, of socialism in America. Ilhan Omar, the woman who denounces America and supports the attack, the 9/11 attack against America. Some people did something, to quote her exactly. Yeah, even they denounced this attack. Because as we have often said on this program, don't react by emotion, because emotion will lead you down the wrong path more often than not. The more emotional you are in dealing with politics and dealing with geopolitical situations, the more likely you are to make a bad decision, like the Patriot Act, which was a gut emotional reaction to 9/11. There were many things that we needed to do after 9/11. The Patriot Act was not one of them, which we now see today in the hindsight with clearer thought and less emotion, and realize that having the government have secret courts and being able to spy on American citizens isn't something that's constitutional. It is not something that's to the benefit of the American people. It has taken us down a path to lead America more into a more of an autocratic nation and to restrict people's freedoms and rights. So let's take away some of this emotion, which is rightfully there. The anger and the shock and the revulsion of what Hamas has done. And there is no way around this. Hamas is wrong. That's absolute. They came in and invaded. As we know, in following this, about 6:30 a.m. yesterday, Hamas broke through the border between the Gaza Strip and Israel on two different fronts, attacking the guards, attacking nine towns adjacent to the Gaza Strip. And they began to kill indiscriminately civilians. We're not talking about military bases. They didn't go after the military bases. They didn't go after the Israeli police force. They went into 9 towns and attacked civilians, killing hundreds, capturing, some believe, thousands of Israeli civilians in their terror tactics. And that is a terror tactic. Let's be very clear about that. Hamas is just an outreach of Iran. This is the Iranian government. Their theocratic, fanatical Muslim leadership from Khamenei himself, the leader, the religious leader of Iran, uses Hamas and Hezbollah as a military wing, just like the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, and the progressives use Antifa in America as their militant, radical wing. It is the same exact scenario. America is directly involved in this. Let's remember, in the Middle East, there is only one ally of the United States. Only one consistent and absolute ally to the United States. That is Israel. That is a fact. It's one of the reasons why we support them so strongly, and they support us. It is also a fact that we support them because of the freedom of religion, the First Amendment, and our support of nations in allowing people to believe their religion, whatever it may be, peacefully. Now, many people will say, well, it's not peaceful. Well, going all the way back to the very beginning, we have seen the Middle East has constantly not recognized Israel and attacked Israel. So this problem goes back a long way. We're only looking at the most recent snapshot of a long-going conflict that started with the Middle East attacking Israel. Yesterday at 6:30, Hamas breaks through, it goes into 9 towns, attacks civilians, and then we see from that attack a secondary front of Hamas break down their walls, break down the border, and they come in huge waves. Now emboldened by the initial attack, the shock of Israel trying to deal with the fact that their civilians, hundreds, thousands in multiple towns, are being attacked and killed and captured. That shock delayed the response by Israel and allowed Hamas to send in a second wave of fighters, which have now enveloped a large portion of Israel and has led to Israel declaring war. These are the facts as we know them. These are the facts that have been reported internationally and confirmed internationally. We're not trying to deal with speculation here. There is speculation, and it has been confirmed that Hamas is taking hostages, which is again another war crime that they are committing. They're using these hostages as human shields to prevent retaliation against them, which would rightfully exist. If the military is coming in to fight them, not to fight the civilians, but to fight Hamas, the military organization, then that would be one thing. But no, Hamas is using civilians, both Palestinian and Israeli civilians, to shield themselves so that they can demonize even further Israel for any retaliation, any attempt to end this conflict. That is another reality that we must be aware of and is being downplayed by most of the major news media and definitely the Democratic Socialists of America and socialists around the world in general. They downplay this very critical factor that is another element of terrorism supported by Iran, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, that they have trained Hamas and Hezbollah to do this so that they can get the political spin that they want around the rest of the world. The biggest contributing factor to this has been the weakness of the Biden-Harris administration. Let's understand, Iran decided that now is the time to attack because Israel, working off of the Abraham Accords that were created by the Trump administration, that's irrefutable, that Trump, in not only getting 3 of the Middle Eastern nations to begin peace talks and peace accords with Israel, which was unprecedented, one of the reasons why he was nominated for 2 Nobel Peace Prizes, but it also started the process of Saudi Arabia, one of the key leading nations in the Middle East, to begin to have diplomatic and peaceful conversations with Israel. And if you have Saudi Arabia, a nation that is currently militarizing because of buying arms from South Korea, which is itself militarizing because of China, if you have Saudi Arabia normalizing its actions and interactions with Israel, well, Iran is the one who loses in that. Iran is fighting a war against Saudi Arabia. They're fighting against Israel, and they don't like them. They don't like anyone who doesn't believe what the Ayatollah believes. So, as we have seen in just the last week, Israel and Saudi Arabia have gotten very close to announcing a peace deal based off of the Abraham Accords created by the Trump administration. That happened because of a strong president. The Biden administration was there to try and they jumped in at the end of this entire discussion to give their support to both Israel and Saudi Arabia if this deal comes together. Another factor that's important to understand on why did Iran act now, it's not just that Saudi Arabia, their enemy, is working with Israel, another enemy of Iran. It's not just that. It's also because as part of the deal, as reported internationally, Saudi Arabia was offering something that you haven't seen in the news. Saudi Arabia offered to increase the output and lower the price of oil. They were going to make more barrels of oil available globally and reduce the price of that oil globally to help gain more support for Saudi Arabia and Israel and that peace deal. Now, this would have a massive impact. This is why the United States was behind this and supporting it strongly, because it would help to reduce the energy inflation created by the Biden-Harris administration when they decided that America could no longer be energy independent and we were competing with our allies and friends for the same oil. thus creating inflation. The oil that Iran is selling to China against international sanctions that is helping to fund Russia, well, that would mean their oil would be worth less money. They would have less of an income and therefore less ability to influence terror around the world, because Iran is the global leader of terror in the world. That is also a fact. It's not an impression. It's not my truth. It is the truth. So Iran has a vested interest economically as well as religiously to be able to have this war, to have Israel break its treaty or prevent a treaty between Israel and Saudi Arabia. So it's both economic and religious. This is why Hamas is acting now. Iran is not big enough or strong enough to fight against the United States directly, which is why it uses terrorism on a regular basis. But it can align itself with China and Russia and North Korea, which it has done, to be able to help them, because China and Russia can compete with the United States economically as well as militarily. And thus, by funding them, they attain their same goal of weakening and destroying the United States that Iran considers the great devil, and Iran considers Israel the little devil. And I don't care if you're a progressive, a Democrat, a conservative, libertarian, it doesn't matter. Iran doesn't care what you are. You don't believe what they believe. Therefore, you're a devil and you need to die. That is what the Ayatollah of Iran has said for 40 years. That is their mindset. Do not deceive yourself or believe these Democratic Socialists of America when they say, well, you just don't understand. If we just were nice to them, they would be okay. No. Their mission statement, as made since 1980, is if you don't believe what Iran's Ayatollah believes, you need to die. In particular, the further left you are, the more you support LGBTQ, the more you support women being able to read and to drive, well, the more Iran hates you. Remember, Iran is a nation that is willing to poison schoolgirls because they dare to learn how to read. That they have killed their own citizens for women daring to have their hair exposed. This is a horrible regime, known for its atrocities around the world, as well as its support of global terror around the world. Because Biden decided to get rid of energy independence, he empowered Iran, allowing them to better increase the global terror around the world. Now, from January 20th of 2021 going forward, the Biden administration has been in a non-stop effort and non-stop negotiation with Iran to restart the Iran nuclear deal, something that even Europe at this point has given up on. But Joe Biden wants this deal. Why? Because it would be a positive bookmark in his presidency. It would be something to show that he could say he did something and it was positive, at least in his view. Mind you, we know, according to John Kerry, former Secretary of State in 2016, he said on CNBC that the Iran nuclear deal funded global terror. We knew this for a fact, that the money was being used for the Iran nuclear deal. Money was being, hundreds of millions of dollars, now billions of dollars, were being used to funnel into global terror, destabilizing the world. That's just a fact. So Joe Biden is trying to bring back that deal to fund global terror with the promise, well, Iran wouldn't go forward with nuclear development, nuclear weapons development, although Iran lies to the world on a regular basis. And throughout this entire process, by the way, Iran never promised that they would be peaceful. At no point in the discussions about the Iran nuclear deal, either under the Obama or the Biden administration, at no point has Iran said, and we'll be nice now, we'll be peaceful. At no point. In fact, every time it has come up, the Ayatollah and Iran's president, Raisi, have said they're going to kill America. There is no confusion here. Just because they may or may not use nuclear weapons if they have them available does not mean that they suddenly are not going to try and kill America and Israel. They have made that very clear. They're going to do that. But the Biden administration, since 2021, has consistently removed sanctions put in place by the Trump administration to reduce the ability of Iran to be able to make nuclear weapons. That's why the sanctions were in place. And the Biden administration has been removing them consistently throughout the entire last 3 years to get Iran to the table to try and make a deal. Even as in December of 2022, when Joe Biden promised the American people that until Iran stopped poisoning women, schoolgirls, and killing women for showing their hair, the Iran nuclear deal was off the table and he was not going to talk to them. Iran hasn't stopped doing those things. And we see throughout this summer, the spring and summer, that the Iran nuclear deal is back on the table. And part of that deal was, as Dow and Mike Bowie have mentioned, was the fact that, well, the Biden administration just released $6 billion to Iran. $6 billion. And of course, Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, said, nope, they're not going to be able to use that money for anything except feeding their people. That's what he said. Joe Biden and the Biden-Harris administration said, no, this would be for humanitarian aid. They can't use that money for anything else. Except they left out something when they said that to the American people last month. There's no way to stop Iran from using the money any way it wants to. In fact, I'm not guessing at that. That is exactly what the president of Iran, Raisi, and the Ayatollah said to the world. If you give Iran $6 billion, they will use it however they think is best. They will use it any way they want to, which means including global terror and to develop weapons of war and to kill Israel and the United States. They made it crystal clear. This is how we get to where we are today. Weak presidents with no foreign policy plan, no international policy roadmap, just doing whatever it sounds like will get more votes for the next election. That's what we have been reduced to in the United States. That's why the world is dealing with more terror, more instability than we have ever seen before. The moment the Biden administration abandoned 5,000 Americans in Afghanistan, the green flag went up, and China and Russia started reacting. And Iran started making plans. It was only confirmed more when the Biden administration went on international news, went on NBC talking to Lester Holt in February of 2022 and said, hey, guess what, folks? We're just going to abandon those 10,000 people in Ukraine. Let them figure out their own way home. And then this year, confirmed once again, 15,000 Americans into Sudan were thrown to the wayside. The news media buried the story immediately, so much so that most Americans today, over 70% of Americans, don't realize that there are 15,000 Americans still in Africa, in the Sudan, that cannot get home, and the Biden administration doesn't care, doesn't talk about them, just left them there. 70% of Americans don't know that because the news media killed the story because it's not good for Democrats in the next election. But the rest of the world saw this. Iran saw this. Saw a president who's weak and is chasing votes, not peace in the world, not stability in the world. This is my conjecture here. This is my understanding that when Iran got the $6 billion, that gave them the spur, the means to start planning for what we see today, this attack, this terrorist attack against Israel, which is very close to the same scale as 9/11. This is the 9/11 for Israel. Let's not play words with it. This is a 9/11 moment for Israel. We understand the religious reason why Iran is doing this. We understand the economic reasons why Iran is doing this. We understand how this is meant to destabilize the Middle East to prevent Saudi Arabia and Israel working together against Iran, their common enemy. We understand how Iran is using the Biden administration and their desire to win the next election to be able to fund their global terror and to make this attack against Israel possible. 5,000 rockets in 24 hours. Those rockets come from Iran. Those rockets were bought and built by the $6 billion coming from the Biden-Harris administration. It's that simple, folks. That's how we get to where we are right now. And it is important that we look at that honestly and without emotion. These are facts. These things happened in this time frame. That is a fact. And the result of those facts, whether you like them or not, leads to a singular outcome, which is what we are seeing right now. And I'm going to get to the comments. Folks, I have not forgotten the comments, but I want to make sure I get this out all at once so it's very clear for everyone, and then I can clarify any of the points that I'm missing here. And now, there's one final part about this, which is the 3 regional war prediction we have made on this channel. And we have made this prediction for years now, for 2 years. We have been warning that we are getting closer to 3 regional wars. Ukraine, Russia, which is basically Europe versus Russia, that is one region. That's one regional war. China invading Taiwan, as they have promised that they will do by force. That we see the world, all of Southeast Asia, is telling us the time frame of that is approximately the end of 2028. We have seen that. The time frame for Japan to build its army, the time frame for South Korea to become the 4th largest weapons manufacturer in the world, the time frame of the Philippines building up bases. What we are seeing throughout all of Southeast Asia tells us that 2028 is when they expect China, who will more than double its navy by that time, will be moving forward. So that was the second region that we have talked about in great detail over the last 2 years. The one area we didn't talk a lot about, which we have identified, is the Middle East, the third region. Now, part of that is ISIS and Al-Qaeda sweeping into Africa, as we have seen, because when Biden ran away from Afghanistan, he gave the keys to the Taliban. And the Taliban released Al-Qaeda and ISIS. And they immediately ran into Africa and started committing atrocities. They started trying to have coups, like in Burkina Faso, which we have talked about. They've tried to overthrow these governments to install their fanatical religious ideology. Okay. But then what also is happening is what we see with Iran and working with China and working with Russia and fighting against Saudi Arabia and fighting against Israel. Well, that's the third region. But when they would explode into something even greater than their normal terrorist actions, more than funding organizations like the Houthis in Yemen and helping to fight and be involved in the fight in the civil war in Syria, when would they take more direct action? There was no way to tell. The Middle East is a hotbed. There is always something going on, and we have terrorist organizations coming out of the woodwork. It's like termites in a piece of rotting wood. But what do we see? Well, this is now the third trigger, the third simultaneous regional war, which is the Middle East, going after Israel, actively attacking Israel. And this is an act of war. Funding the attack, organizing the attack. And I say they organized it. President Raisi of Iran was one of the key individuals who planned and executed the hostage crisis in 1980 or 79, the hostage crisis under President Carter when they took over Iran. Rayasi was one of the key individuals who killed many of his own Iranians to be able to overthrow the government, to put in the Ayatollah, to support this religious fanaticism. And what we are seeing right now with the West Bank, with Hamas, is very similar to exactly what happened in 1979 when Iran directly took over the American embassy and held over 400 Americans hostage. It has his fingerprints all over it. So now I've given you, in a very short summary here, I know it took about 45 minutes, believe it or not. This is the short version of this. But to let you understand, what are we dealing with here? See, the Democratic Socialists of America, they're supposedly, and I've been looking for it, there's no video of this yet. They're down in New York in Times Square, and they're trying to convince everyone, no, they're the good guys for supporting terrorism because they have a feeling they don't like Israel. They don't like America. And they're willing to work with anyone to tear us down. That's exactly what Iran is doing. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Boss. Dragging into the Southern Tier, I'm happy to be here with you today.
Eric Holder, the Attorney General of the United States, admitted he has not read the Arizona immigration law.
I know it is a difficult task to stand up in front of our peers and say to Congress and say that Congress has failed to listen to voters.
You here at CPAC said yes to President Donald Trump in 2016, and I know you're going to say yes to.
She was very aware that she had the flag in her hands and that the flag was dragging on the ground. That is an intentional action. She knows what she is doing. She then drops the flag. Understand the logic, and we see this in social media on a regular basis, and it's something that Newsweek decided not to tell you about. Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, a representative in Congress who is writing laws to deny American citizens their rights, has no idea what she's talking about.
And they are against the vaccine mandate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you support that?
Last time I checked, there were not a lot of planes crashing into each other at airports, right? You can meet a very, very stringent accuracy rate when it's important, when it matters, like in federal elections.
The quote from Joe Biden where he is admitting that he is willing to lie to the American people.